The dust cloud rose behind the stagecoach like a warning signal, and Sarah Mitchell pressed her face against the window, watching the Arizona territory stretch endlessly before her as the wheels rattled over the rough trail toward the town of Copper Springs in the summer of 1882. She had traveled nearly 2,000 miles from Boston with nothing but a carpetbag, a letter from a lawyer, and the weight of expectations she never asked to carry, leaving behind the suffocating parlors and the man her parents had chosen for her to marry, a wealthy banker twice her age who looked at her like she was another asset to acquire. The morning she left, her mother had wept into her handkerchief and called her foolish, but Sarah had felt nothing except the fierce burning need to breathe air that did not taste like obligation and disappointment. The stagecoach jerked to a halt, and Sarah climbed down into the blazing afternoon heat, her dark traveling dress immediately becoming unbearable in the desert sun. Copper Springs spread before her like something from a dime novel, wooden buildings lining a dusty main street, horses tied to hitching posts, and men in wide-brimmed hats moving with purpose or lounging in the shade. The driver handed down her bag, tipped his hat, and the coach rolled away, leaving her standing alone in front of the general store with red dust settling on her polished boots. "Miss Mitchell." A thin man in a dark suit approached, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "I'm Arthur Hendricks, the lawyer who wrote to you. Welcome to Copper Springs." Sarah shook his hand, grateful for any familiar connection in this strange place. "Thank you for contacting me about my uncle's property. I still cannot quite believe he left me his ranch." Hendricks nodded, his expression carefully neutral. "Your Uncle Thomas was a good man, well respected in these parts. The ranch is about 5 miles north of town, decent land with water rights, but I should be honest with you, Miss Mitchell. Running a ranch out here is not like managing a household back east. It requires knowledge, strength, and understanding of livestock and land that most Eastern ladies simply do not possess." Sarah lifted her chin, sensing the familiar condescension she had hoped to escape. "Then I suppose I shall have to learn, Mr. Hendricks. Where is the ranch?" "I have arranged for someone to take you out there tomorrow morning," Hendricks said. "Tonight, Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house has a room prepared for you. Let me show you the way." The boarding house was clean and simple, and Mrs. Patterson, a warm woman with silver threading through her dark hair, showed Sarah to a small room with a window overlooking the street. After washing the travel dust from her face and changing into a lighter cotton dress, Sarah lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering what she had truly gotten herself into. She had never met Uncle Thomas, her father's estranged brother who had gone west 30 years ago and never returned. But when the lawyer's letter arrived informing her that she had inherited his ranch, it had felt like a door opening in a locked room. Sleep came fitfully, and morning arrived with roosters crowing and the sounds of the town waking. Sarah dressed carefully, braiding her dark blonde hair and pinning it up, then went downstairs where Mrs. Patterson had breakfast waiting. The other boarders, mostly men who worked in the copper mine that gave the town its name, eyed her with curiosity but said nothing beyond polite greetings. Mr. Hendricks arrived with a wagon just as Sarah finished eating. "The ranch hand who has been looking after the place since your uncle passed will meet us there," he explained as they drove north out of town, the desert landscape dotted with saguaro cacti and scrub brush. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks sharp against the brilliant blue sky. The ranch appeared gradually, first a windmill turning lazily in the breeze, then a barn and corral, and finally a house built of adobe and wood with a covered porch. It was larger than Sarah had imagined, solid and real, and something in her chest loosened at the sight of it. This was hers, a place where no one could tell her who to marry or how to live. A man emerged from the barn as the wagon pulled up, and Sarah found herself staring. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and brown hair that needed cutting, wearing dusty jeans, a faded blue shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. He moved with an easy confidence, leading a horse to the corral before walking toward them. And when he removed his hat, Sarah saw a face that was weathered but young, probably no more than 28 or 29, with gray eyes that assessed her with the same careful attention she was giving him. "Miss Mitchell, this is Cole Harrison," Hendricks said. "He worked for your uncle for the past 5 years." Cole nodded, his expression guarded. "Ma'am, I am sorry for your loss, though I understand you and Thomas were not acquainted." "No, we were not," Sarah admitted, climbing down from the wagon without waiting for assistance. "But I am grateful for his generosity and I appreciate you maintaining the property." "Just doing my job," Cole said simply. "Though I should tell you straight that Thomas owed me 3 months' wages when he passed. Hendricks here has been saying the estate needs to be settled before I can be paid." Hendricks shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, well, that is correct. Miss Mitchell will need to review the accounts and determine how to proceed with the ranch operations before any back wages can be distributed." Sarah looked between them, understanding the tension immediately. "How much is owed, Mr. Harrison?" $90, Cole said, meeting her eyes directly. "Thomas was good for it, just had a bad season and the money was tight. He told me he would pay me when the cattle sold in the fall, but then his heart gave out in July." "I see." Sarah turned to Hendricks. "Is there money in the estate to cover this debt?" "Eventually, yes, but the probate process requires." "Mr. Hendricks, this man has worked without pay for 3 months while maintaining property that I now own. That seems unconscionable." Sarah pulled her reticule from the wagon. "I have some of my own money. Will you accept $60 now, Mr. Harrison, with the remaining 30 to follow when I can access the estate funds? Consider it my first act as the ranch owner." Cole stared at her for a long moment, surprise flickering across his features. "That is more than fair, Miss Mitchell. I accept." She counted out the money and his weathered hand brushed hers as he took it, the calluses rough against her palm. Something passed between them in that brief contact, a spark of connection that made Sarah pull back quickly, her cheeks warming in a way that had nothing to do with the desert heat. Hendricks spent the next hour walking Sarah through the property, showing her the accounts book, explaining the cattle operation and the water rights that made the land valuable. Cole remained mostly silent, but Sarah felt his presence like a magnetic pull, aware of him watching her as she examined the barn, the well, the small garden plot behind the house. The house itself was simple but well-built, with a main room that served as kitchen and living area, 2 bedrooms, and a loft accessible by a ladder. Thomas had kept it clean but spare, and Sarah could see already the things she might change, the curtains she could make, the way she might arrange furniture to catch the light. "I will need help learning to run this place," Sarah said finally, standing on the porch as Hendricks prepared to leave. "Mr. Harrison, would you be willing to stay on and teach me what I need to know? I can pay standard wages going forward once we determine what that should be." Cole leaned against the porch railing, studying her with those thoughtful gray eyes. "Are you planning to actually run this ranch yourself, or are you looking to sell it?" "I have not decided," Sarah answered honestly. "But I did not travel 2,000 miles just to turn around and go back. I want to try." "It is hard work," Cole said. "Harder than anything you have done before, I would wager. This is not some romantic adventure from a story book. Cattle need tending every day, fences need mending, there are predators and weather and 100 things that can go wrong. Your hands will blister and your back will ache, and there will be days you wonder why you bothered. Are you trying to discourage me, Mr. Harrison?" "I am trying to be honest with you, Miss Mitchell. I have seen plenty of folks come out west with dreams and no understanding of what they are getting into. Most of them do not last a year." Sarah stepped closer, meeting his challenge directly. "Then I suppose you will just have to teach me well enough that I am not one of them." "Will you stay or not?" A slow smile curved Cole's mouth, transforming his serious expression into something warmer. "I will stay, at least through the fall. After that, we will see if you still want me around." Hendricks left, and Sarah found herself alone with Cole, the afternoon stretching before them. He showed her where Thomas had kept supplies, explained the routine of feeding and watering the horses, and the small herd of cattle that grazed on the rangeland beyond the immediate property. Sarah listened intently, asking questions and taking mental notes, determined to prove that she was serious. "You should change clothes if you are going to work out here," Cole said finally, eyeing her cotton dress. "That will not hold up to ranch work." "I do not have anything else suitable," Sarah admitted. "Everything I brought is what a lady would wear in Boston." Cole shook his head, but there was amusement in his expression now rather than judgment. "Come on. Thomas was shorter than me, but his clothes might work for you until you can get proper gear in town." He led her into the house, to the bedroom that had been her uncle's, and pulled out a trunk. Inside were shirts and jeans, a leather vest, and a sturdy pair of boots. "Try these." "I will wait outside." Sarah closed the door and changed quickly, feeling strange and exposed in men's clothing but also oddly free. The jeans were too long and she had to roll them up, and the shirt hung loose on her slender frame, but the boots fit reasonably well. She studied herself in the small mirror, hardly recognizing the woman who looked back, then squared her shoulders and went outside. Cole was by the corral and he looked up as she approached, his eyes widening slightly. "Well, you look more like a ranch hand now. How do they feel?" "Strange but practical," Sarah said, moving more easily without skirts tangling around her legs. "What should I learn first?" "How to ride properly," Cole said. "Can you ride at all?" "I took riding lessons as a girl, in a park with an instructor." Cole actually laughed, the sound surprising and pleasant. "That is not riding, Miss Mitchell. That is sitting on a horse while it walks in a circle. Come on, let me introduce you to Rosie." She was Thomas's favorite mare, gentle but smart. The next hours passed in a blur of instruction and correction as Cole taught Sarah how to mount without a saddle block, how to sit properly, how to guide the horse with her knees and the reins. She fell off twice, landing hard in the dirt, but scrambled back up both times, refusing to show weakness. Cole corrected her grip, adjusted her posture, explained the signals that would make the horse respond. And gradually, Sarah began to feel less like she was perched on top of a dangerous animal and more like she was working with a partner. The sun was setting when Cole finally called a halt. "That is enough for today. You will be sore tomorrow." Sarah slid down from the horse, her legs trembling with fatigue, and nearly stumbled. Cole caught her elbow, steadying her, and for a moment they stood very close, his hand warm through the thin fabric of her borrowed shirt. Sarah looked up and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite read, something between respect and curiosity and something else that made her pulse quicken. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for teaching me, for being patient." "You did well," Cole said, releasing her arm and stepping back. "Better than I expected, honestly. Most Eastern ladies would have quit after the first fall." "I am not most Eastern ladies," Sarah said, leading Rosie back toward the barn as Cole had taught her. "No," Cole agreed, following with his own horse. "I am starting to see that." They worked together to unsaddle the horses, brush them down, and feed them for the night. Cole showed Sarah how to check their hooves for stones, how to make sure the water trough was full, the dozens of small tasks that made up the daily routine. By the time they finished, full darkness had fallen, and Sarah realized she had not thought once about dinner. "There is a bunkhouse behind the barn where I have been staying," Cole said as they walked back toward the main house. "I will leave you to settle in. Do you know how to cook?" "Basic things, yes," Sarah smiled ruefully. "Though I had servants to do most of it back home, I can manage, I think. There are supplies in the kitchen, dried beans and salt pork and such. I will bring fresh milk in the morning from the cow." Cole hesitated, then added, "If you need anything during the night, just call out. I will hear you." "I will be fine, Mr. Harrison, but thank you." "You should probably call me Cole," he said. "We are going to be working together every day, might as well dispense with formalities." "Then you should call me Sarah." He nodded, touched the brim of his hat, and walked away into the darkness. Sarah watched him go, then turned and entered the house, lighting the oil lamp Thomas had left on the table. The main room looked different now, filled with shadows and the smell of dust and old smoke from the stove. She found the supplies Cole had mentioned and managed to heat up some beans and make coffee, eating alone at the rough wooden table. The silence felt enormous after the constant noise of Boston, broken only by the wind outside and the settling of the house. Sarah cleaned her dishes, then explored more thoroughly, finding Thomas's personal effects in the bedroom, a few books on the shelf, a photograph of a young couple she assumed were her grandparents. In the second bedroom, empty except for a narrow bed and a dresser, she found clean sheets in a trunk and made up the bed, her muscles already aching from the day's exertion. She changed back into her nightgown, braided her hair and lay down, exhausted but strangely exhilarated. The bed was not as comfortable as what she had left behind, but it was hers in a house that was hers, on land that was hers. For the first time in her 23 years, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Sleep came quickly, and she did not wake until sunrise when a rooster crowed somewhere nearby. Sarah dressed in the borrowed clothes again, splashed water on her face from the basin, and went outside to find Cole already at work, milking the cow in a small shelter near the barn. "Good morning," she called, and he looked up, nodded. "Morning. Sleep well. Better than I expected." Sarah came closer, watching his hands work with practiced efficiency. "Can you teach me how to do that? You want to learn to milk a cow?" Cole sounded amused. "I want to learn everything I need to know to run this ranch. That includes milking cows." So Cole showed her, guiding her hands to the correct position, explaining the rhythm and pressure needed. Sarah's first attempts produced barely a trickle, and the cow stamped its feet in annoyance, but gradually she got the feel of it. Cole's patience surprised her, the way he explained without condescension, corrected without criticism. "You have a gift for teaching," Sarah said as they carried the milk bucket back to the house. "Have you always worked with cattle?" "Since I was 14, Cole said. "My father had a ranch in New Mexico Territory smaller than this. He died when I was 17 and I had to sell the land to pay his debts. I have been working other people's ranches ever since, saving what I can." "Do you want your own place someday? Does not everyone?" Cole set the bucket on the kitchen table. "But land is expensive, and I have never quite managed to save enough. Working for Thomas was good though. He paid fair and taught me a lot about water management and breeding stock. I was hoping to maybe partner with him eventually, but then he died." Sarah heard the genuine grief in Cole's voice and understood that her uncle had meant something to this man beyond just being an employer. "Tell me about him," she said impulsively. "I never knew him, and my father rarely spoke of his brother." Cole settled into one of the kitchen chairs, and Sarah made coffee while he talked, describing Thomas Mitchell as a fair man, tough but kind, someone who had built this ranch from nothing and took pride in doing things right. He had been a good neighbor, Cole said, helping others when they needed it and never asking for credit. He had died quickly, a heart attack while riding the range, found by Cole hours later. He talked about his family back east sometimes, Cole said. "I know there was a falling out years ago, something about your grandfather's will. Thomas did not agree with how things were divided, so he left and made his own way. I think he respected that you came out here rather than just selling sight unseen." "I hope so," Sarah said quietly. "I hope I can make something of this place that would honor his work." They spent that day riding the range, with Cole showing Sarah the boundaries of the property, the locations of water sources, the areas where cattle tended to gather. Sarah's body protested every movement, muscles sore from yesterday's riding, but she gritted her teeth and kept going, determined not to show weakness. Cole pointed out landmarks, explained how to read the land, warned her about rattlesnakes and other dangers. "The most important thing is water," he said as they paused by a creek that ran through a small canyon. "This creek feeds from a spring up in those hills, never runs dry even in drought years. That is what makes this ranch valuable. Some of the other spreads around here, they struggle in dry summers, but Thomas built this place around reliable water. Sarah studied the landscape, beginning to see it through Cole's eyes, understanding the way water shaped everything. How many cattle do we have? About 200 heads scattered across the range. We will need to do a proper count soon, maybe next week when you are more comfortable in the saddle. Then in the fall, we round them up and take them to market in Tucson. How far is that? 3 days' drive with a herd faster on horseback. It is hard work, dusty and tiring, but it is how we make money. The days fell into a pattern after that, each morning starting early with chores, milking, feeding, and then hours of instruction as Cole taught Sarah the skills she needed. She learned to rope, throwing the lasso again and again until her shoulder ached and her hands were raw, but eventually managing to catch the practice post more often than not. She learned to mend fences, pounding posts into the hard ground and stringing wire. She learned to recognize the signs of sick cattle, how to treat simple ailments, when to call for the veterinarian from town. Cole proved to be a demanding but effective teacher, pushing Sarah hard but also knowing when to call for breaks, when to let her rest. They talked while they worked, sharing pieces of their lives. Sarah told him about Boston, about the suffocating expectations and the engagement she had fled, though she did not mention her former fiancé's name. Cole talked about growing up in New Mexico, about his mother who had died when he was young, about the years of wandering from ranch to ranch. "You could have gone anywhere after your father died," Sarah said one afternoon as they repaired a section of corral fence. "Why stay in the territory? Why not go to California or back east where there might be more opportunities?" Cole hammered a nail with 3 solid strikes before answering. "This is my home. I know the land, understand it. Back east, I would just be another nobody competing for factory work or clerking in some store. Out here, I am good at what I do, and people respect skill more than fancy pedigree. Plus, I like the space, the way you can ride for hours and see nothing but desert and sky." Sarah understood that feeling more each day, the way the vast openness made her breathe easier, made the problems of her past life seem small and distant. She had written to her parents, informing them that she had arrived safely and intended to stay, but had received no response. Part of her expected them to send someone to drag her back, but as weeks passed with no word, she began to believe they had simply washed their hands of their rebellious daughter. "You miss it at all?" Cole asked. "The city, the society, all the things you gave up?" "No," Sarah said honestly. "I thought I might, but I do not. Here I feel like I can breathe, like I am becoming who I was always meant to be, if that makes sense." Cole looked at her thoughtfully, his gray eyes warm in the afternoon sun. "It makes sense. I think Thomas would have liked you, Sarah. You have his stubbornness." Something shifted between them in that moment. The careful professional distance they had maintained beginning to blur into something more personal. Sarah found herself noticing things about Cole she had tried to ignore. The way his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he worked, the sound of his rare laugh, the gentle patience he showed with the animals. She caught him watching her sometimes with an expression that made her stomach flutter, quickly looking away when their eyes met. Mrs. Patterson came out to the ranch one afternoon in her wagon, bringing fresh-baked bread and a basket of vegetables from her garden. "I wanted to see how you were settling in," she said, her sharp eyes taking in Sarah's sunburned face and work-worn hands. "The whole town is talking about the Eastern lady who is actually trying to run Thomas's ranch instead of selling it. Are they saying I will fail?" Sarah asked, more curious than offended. "Some are," Mrs. Patterson admitted, "but others are impressed. Not many women would take on a challenge like this, and I hear Cole Harrison is teaching you everything Thomas knew." "He has been very patient with me," Sarah said, aware of Cole working nearby, probably within earshot. "I could not manage without him." "Cole is a good man," Mrs. Patterson said. "Known him since he came to Copper Springs 5 years ago. Works hard, does not drink or gamble like some of the other hands, saves his money. Thomas thought very highly of him. Sarah heard the unspoken message in Mrs. Patterson's words, the older woman's approval of Cole, and felt her cheeks warm. He certainly knows ranching, among other things, Mrs. Patterson smiled knowingly. Well, I will leave you to your work. Come to town this Sunday for church services if you can. Folks would like to meet you properly. After she left, Sarah stood on the porch, watching the wagon disappear down the trail. Cole came up beside her, close enough that she could smell the clean sweat and leather scent of him. You do not have to go if you do not want to, he said quietly. Town gossip can be harsh sometimes. I am not afraid of gossip, Sarah said. Though I probably should get some proper women's clothes for church, I cannot show up in borrowed men's jeans. There is a seamstress in town, Mrs. Chen. She is good and quick. I could take you in tomorrow if you want. They rode into Copper Springs the next morning, Sarah on Rosie and Cole on his big bay gelding named Duke. The town was busier than when Sarah had first arrived, with freight wagons loading supplies for the mines and ranch families coming in to trade. People stared as they passed, and Sarah heard the whispers, saw the curious and judgmental looks. Cole led her to a small shop near the general store, where a Chinese woman greeted them with a warm smile. Mrs. Chen listened as Sarah explained what she needed, practical dresses suitable for ranch life but presentable for town, then measured her efficiently and showed her fabric samples. I can have 2 dresses ready by Saturday, Mrs. Chen said. Simple but well made. You come back then, yes. Sarah agreed and paid a deposit. Then she and Cole walked down the main street toward the general store to pick up supplies. Men touched their hats as they passed, and women nodded coolly, except for one older woman who stopped directly in their path. You are Thomas Mitchell's niece, she said, looking Sarah up and down with disapproval. I heard you were living out at the ranch with Cole Harrison. That hardly seems proper. Sarah felt her temper flare but kept her voice level. Mr. Harrison works for me and lives in the bunkhouse. My uncle trusted him, and so do I. Is there something else you wish to say, Mrs. Caldwell? I run the respectable boarding house on 3rd Street, and I know impropriety when I see it. A young, unmarried woman alone with a man, even on a ranch, invites scandal. Then it is fortunate I do not care much about scandal, Sarah said coolly. Good day, Mrs. Caldwell. She walked past, and Cole followed, his expression carefully blank until they were inside the general store. Then he let out a low whistle. You just made an enemy. Beatrice Caldwell runs the Church Ladies' Auxiliary and considers herself the moral guardian of Copper Springs. She can guard all she likes. It has nothing to do with me. Sarah was still angry, her hands shaking slightly as she picked up a sack of flour. I am tired of people thinking they have the right to dictate how I should live. Sarah. Cole touched her arm, his voice gentle. She is not completely wrong. The way we are living, it could hurt your reputation if you care about that. Do you care? Sarah challenged, looking up at him. Cole held her gaze, something intense and complicated moving behind his eyes. I care that you might be hurt because of me. If you want me to move into town, find a room somewhere, I will do it. I can still work the ranch during the day. No. Sarah surprised herself with the vehemence of her response. I need you there, not riding back and forth. Mrs. Caldwell and her friends can think whatever they want. They finished their shopping in silence, loading supplies into the saddlebags. As they prepared to leave, the sheriff approached, a middle-aged man with a weathered face and tired eyes. Miss Mitchell, I am Sheriff Tom Brennan. I wanted to introduce myself and say if you have any trouble out at the ranch, you send word into town. We watch out for each other in these parts. Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate that. I also wanted to warn you that there has been some rustling lately, cattle disappearing from the range island. Keep a close watch on your stock. Cole, you are armed out there, always, Cole said. We will keep alert. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Sarah replayed the encounter with Mrs. Caldwell, the sheriff's warning about rustlers, the weight of Cole's question about reputation. She knew the situation was unconventional, knew that by Boston standards it was scandalous, but out here it simply made practical sense. Except it was becoming something more than practical, and Sarah knew it, could feel the pull between them growing stronger each day. That night, after the chores were finished and they had eaten a simple dinner together at the kitchen table, Cole lingered instead of heading to the bunkhouse. "Sarah, about what I said earlier, I want you to know I respect you. I would never do anything to compromise your reputation or take advantage of the situation." "I know that," Sarah said quietly. "I trust you, Cole, more than I have trusted anyone in a long time." He nodded, but something flickered in his expression, something that looked like longing. "I should go. Good night, Sarah. Good night." She watched through the window as he crossed to the bunkhouse, the lamplight from his window glowing warm in the darkness. Sarah prepared for bed, but sleep was elusive, her mind churning with thoughts she had been trying to suppress. She was attracted to Cole, deeply attracted, and it was more than just his physical presence. It was the way he treated her as an equal, teaching without patronizing, correcting without crushing her spirit. It was his quiet competence, his dry humor, the glimpses of gentleness beneath his weathered exterior. It was the way he made her feel safe and challenged at the same time, but what did he feel? He was unfailingly respectful, but sometimes she caught him watching her with an intensity that suggested his feelings went beyond employer and employee. Or was she imagining it, projecting her own desires onto him? The week passed quickly, filled with work and learning. They rode out to check the herd, counting cattle and looking for signs of rustling. They found one steer with a brand that did not match Thomas's mark, clearly driven onto their land deliberately or stolen from a neighbor, and Cole decided they should alert the sheriff on their next trip to town. Saturday arrived, and they rode into Copper Springs to pick up Sarah's new dresses. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself, creating two beautiful garments that were practical yet flattering, with split skirts that would allow Sarah to ride while still looking presentable. Sarah changed into one before leaving the shop, feeling strange in women's clothing again after weeks in borrowed jeans. Cole's reaction when she emerged made her breath catch. He stared for a long moment, something raw and unguarded in his expression before he controlled it. "You look nice," he said, his voice rough. "Thank you." Sarah felt heat rise in her cheeks, aware of the charged atmosphere between them. They had lunch at the hotel restaurant, drawing more stares from the other diners. Halfway through the meal, a well-dressed man approached their table, removing his hat with a practiced smile. "Miss Mitchell, I am Robert Garrett, owner of the Double G Ranch to the east of your property. I wanted to introduce myself and welcome you to the territory." Sarah nodded politely. "Thank you, Mr. Garrett. This is Cole Harrison, my ranch foreman." Garrett barely glanced at Cole, his attention focused on Sarah. "I knew your uncle, fine man. I was sorry to hear of his passing. I actually wanted to speak with you about a business matter. I have been interested in purchasing Thomas's water rights for some time. He was not willing to sell, but perhaps you might be more amenable. I would offer a very generous price." "The water rights are not for sale," Sarah said immediately. "I understand you are still settling in. Perhaps you do not fully grasp the value or the work involved. If you are interested in remaining in the territory but do not wish to run a ranch yourself, I would also be willing to purchase the entire property. You could live very comfortably in town on what I would pay." She said no. Cole's voice was quiet but hard. Garrett finally looked at him, his expression dismissive. "I was speaking to Miss Mitchell, not her hired hand." "Mr. Garrett," Sarah said, her voice cold. "Cole speaks for me in this matter. The ranch is not for sale, not the water rights, not any part of it. I intend to continue my uncle's work, and I would appreciate you respecting that decision." Garrett's smile tightened. "I see. Well, should you change your mind, my offer remains open." "Good day, Miss Mitchell." He walked away, and Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. That was unpleasant. "Garrett has been trying to control all the water in this valley for years," Cole said, his jaw tight. "He is greedy and ruthless." Thomas had several confrontations with him over boundary lines and water access. You need to be careful of him, Sarah. I am not afraid of a bully. But Sarah felt a chill despite her brave words, sensing that Robert Garrett might be a more serious threat than town gossips or rustlers. They rode home in thoughtful silence, arriving at the ranch as the sun set in brilliant streaks of orange and gold. While Cole tended the horses, Sarah went inside to start dinner, but found herself standing at the window watching him work. The conversation with Garrett had shaken her more than she wanted to admit, bringing home the reality that she had enemies in this new life, people who would be happy to see her fail. But she also had Cole, she realized. Cole, who stood up for her, who believed in her capabilities, who was teaching her everything she needed to know to survive. Cole, who made her heart race and her skin tingle and filled her dreams with images that would have scandalized Mrs. Caldwell beyond recovery. The door opened and Cole entered, pausing when he saw her standing in the shadows. "Sarah, are you all right? I was just thinking," she said softly, "about everything that has happened since I arrived, about how different my life is now." Cole moved closer, his face concerned. "Are you having regrets?" "No, not even one." Sarah looked up at him, making a decision she had been circling for weeks. "Cole, I need to tell you something. The reason I left Boston, it was not just about inheriting the ranch. I was engaged to be married to a man chosen by my parents. He was 45 years old, wealthy, and he looked at me like I was a horse he was considering purchasing. I could not bear the thought of spending my life as his ornament, his possession. So when the letter came about Uncle Thomas's ranch, I saw a way out and I took it." Cole was very still, listening intently. "Did you love him? Your fiancé?" "I barely knew him. My parents arranged the match and I was expected to be grateful and obedient." Sarah laughed bitterly. "I tried to be the daughter they wanted, but I could not marry him. So I ran, and I know they think I have ruined myself, thrown away my future. But standing here now, I would do it again in a heartbeat." "You are brave," Cole said quietly. "Braver than most men I know, let alone most women. What you have done, coming out here alone, learning to run this ranch, it takes real courage." "I do not feel brave. I feel terrified half the time. Being brave does not mean you are not scared. It means you do it anyway." Cole hesitated, then reached out slowly and took her hand, his rough fingers gentle. "Sarah, I want you to know I am glad you came here. These past weeks, working with you, watching you learn and grow stronger, it has been the best time I have had in years. You make this place feel like more than just a job." Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "What does it feel like?" "Like home," Cole said simply. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, sending shivers up her arm. "Like something I want to protect and be part of if you will have me." "Cole." Sarah stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of you as my employer and started thinking of you as something much more important. I am saying that I wake up every morning looking forward to seeing you, and I go to bed every night wishing I did not have to leave you. I am saying that I care about you, Sarah Mitchell, more than is probably wise or appropriate." Joy and desire flooded through Sarah in equal measure. "Why would it not be appropriate?" "Because I am a ranch hand with no prospects beyond the wages I earn, and you are an educated Eastern lady who owns property and deserves so much better than someone like me." "Stop." Sarah put her free hand on his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. "Do not tell me what I deserve. I left Boston because people there thought they knew what I should want, who I should be. Out here, I thought I could finally make my own choices. Was I wrong?" "No," Cole breathed. "No, you were not wrong." "Then let me choose this. Let me choose you." Cole made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a groan, and then he was cupping her face in his hands, his calloused thumbs gentle on her cheeks. "Sarah, are you sure? Once we cross this line, everything changes." "I want everything to change," Sarah whispered. "Kiss me, Cole." He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Sarah rose on her toes to meet him, and when their lips finally touched, It felt like coming home and catching fire at the same time. Cole kissed her with a tenderness that made tears spring to her eyes, his mouth soft and warm, tasting her like she was precious and rare. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer, and the kiss deepened, becoming more urgent. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the day you paid my wages without hesitation, treating me like my work mattered." "It does matter. You matter." Sarah kissed him again, reveling in the freedom to touch him, to feel his strong arms around her. "Stay with me tonight, not in the bunkhouse. Here." Cole pulled back slightly, his eyes searching hers. "Sarah, I want that more than you know, but I do not want to rush you. We have time." "I know. I am not asking for anything except your presence. I just want to fall asleep knowing you are near, not across the yard." She smiled, understanding his restraint and loving him more for it. "We can take things slowly, figure out what this means, but I am tired of pretending I do not feel what I feel." "All right," Cole said softly. "But I will sleep on the floor in the main room, keep everything proper." They made up a pallet of blankets near the stove, and after Sarah changed into her nightgown in her room, she came back out to find Cole settling down, still fully dressed except for his boots. She sat beside him and he reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Tell me more about your family," Sarah said. "Your mother, what was she like?" Cole smiled, the expression softening his features. "She was strong, came from Mexico originally. My father met her in Santa Fe and courted her for a year before she agreed to marry him. She taught me Spanish, how to cook, how to treat people with respect regardless of whether they were rich or poor. She died of fever when I was 12, and my father never really recovered. He started making bad business decisions, borrowing money he could not pay back. When he died, I found out he had mortgaged the ranch to pay debts I did not even know existed." "I am sorry," Sarah said quietly. "That must have been devastating." "It was. But it also taught me to be careful with money, to save for the future, to not count on things that can be taken away." Cole looked at her seriously. "That is why I do not have much to offer you, Sarah. I have been working for wages for years, putting aside what I can, but it is not much. Maybe $300 saved up. Not enough to buy land, not enough to start my own ranch. I am 29 years old and I still do not have my own place." "You have skills and knowledge and integrity," Sarah said firmly. "Those are worth more than money. And you have this ranch if you want it. I cannot run it alone, Cole. I need you, not just as a hired hand but as a partner. We could do this together." "Sarah, I cannot let you just give me half your ranch because we kissed. I am not giving you anything. I am proposing a partnership, a real one. You know this land and this business better than I ever will. It makes sense to share it, to build something together." She squeezed his hand. "And yes, I care about you, more than I have ever cared about anyone, but this is also a sound business decision." Cole studied her face for a long moment, then shook his head with a small smile. "You are something else, Sarah Mitchell, but let us take this slow, see how things develop. I will stay on as foreman for now, and we will see where the trail leads." They talked late into the night, sharing stories and dreams, learning each other. Sarah told him about her childhood, the strict rules and endless expectations, the suffocating sense of being trapped in a life designed by others. Cole described years of drifting, working hard but never quite finding a place that felt permanent, until he came to Thomas's ranch and started to imagine a different future. Eventually, Sarah's eyes grew heavy, and she dozed off sitting beside Cole's pallet, her head resting on his shoulder. He carried her carefully to her bedroom and tucked her in, brushing a kiss across her forehead before returning to his own makeshift bed. Sarah woke once in the night and heard him moving quietly in the main room, knowing he was there, and smiled into the darkness before drifting back to sleep. Sunday morning, they attended church services in town, Sarah in her new dress and Cole in his cleanest shirt and jeans. The small wooden church was full, and heads turned as they entered together. Mrs. Patterson waved them to a seat near the front, ignoring the disapproving looks from Mrs. Caldwell and her circle. After the service, several townspeople approached to introduce themselves properly. A rancher named Ben Cooper shook Cole's hand and told Sarah that if she needed any help or advice, he was happy to assist a neighbor. The banker, Mr. Stevens, mentioned that Thomas had maintained an account in good standing, and Sarah should come by to review the finances. Even the owner of the saloon, a surprisingly refined woman named Miss Lucy, welcomed Sarah to Copper Springs and invited her to the monthly social at the community hall. Robert Garrett was also present, and he watched Sarah and Cole with calculating eyes but did not approach. Sarah felt his attention like an itch between her shoulder blades, a reminder that not everyone wished them well. Over the following weeks, Sarah and Cole fell into a new rhythm, working side by side during the day and spending evenings together in the house, talking and laughing and learning each other's hearts. They stole kisses in the barn, held hands while riding the range, and shared meals at the kitchen table like an old married couple. Cole still slept in the main room, maintaining propriety despite Sarah's protests, but the connection between them deepened with each passing day. Sarah met with the banker and reviewed the ranch finances, discovering that while Thomas had not been wealthy, he had managed his money well, and the property was profitable. With careful management, she and Cole could not only sustain the operation but potentially expand it. She also learned that Robert Garrett had approached the bank multiple times trying to find a way to force a sale of Thomas's water rights, but the law was clear. The rights belonged to the property owner. Garrett is persistent, Mr. Stevens warned. He has acquired most of the other water sources in the valley through various means, some legal, some questionable. Your uncle's spring is one of the last independent sources, and Garrett will not give up easily. Let him try, Sarah said confidently. The ranch is not for sale. But Garrett's persistence took a more sinister turn. Cattle started disappearing more frequently, always from the sections of rangeland farthest from the house. Fences were cut, allowing stock to wander onto neighboring properties or into the desert where they could die of thirst. One morning, Cole discovered that someone had tried to poison the spring, dumping something foul into the water source upstream. "This is escalating," Cole said grimly as they cleaned out the contaminated pool and waited for fresh water to flush through. "Garrett is trying to force you to sell by making it impossible to operate the ranch." "Then we fight back," Sarah said. "We report this to the sheriff, document everything, and we stay vigilant." Sheriff Brennan took their report seriously, but admitted he had no proof that Garrett was behind the sabotage. "I know what he is capable of, but knowing and proving are different things. Keep records of every incident, and I will increase patrols out this way when I can." Cole began sleeping in the barn instead of the bunkhouse, keeping watch over the livestock. Sarah protested, worried about his safety, but he was adamant. "If someone comes onto this property intending harm, I want to know about it before they can do damage." One night, Sarah woke to the sound of gunfire. She bolted from bed, threw on a robe, and ran outside to find Cole exchanging shots with shadowy figures near the corral. She grabbed the rifle Thomas had kept by the door, not thinking, just acting, and fired a shot over the heads of the intruders. The attackers scattered, riding off into the darkness, and Cole ran to Sarah, grabbing her shoulders. "Are you hurt? Did they hit you?" "No, I am fine. Are you all right?" "I am fine, just angry." Cole looked toward the direction the riders had fled. "They were trying to open the corral and drive off the horses. If you had not come out firing, they might have succeeded." Sarah was shaking now that the danger had passed, adrenaline making her knees weak. Cole pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and Sarah buried her face against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him. "This has to stop," she whispered. "Someone is going to get killed." "I know," Cole stroked her hair, his voice rough with emotion. "Sarah, maybe you should consider going back east until this settles down. I can handle Garrett and his men, but I cannot keep you safe if they decide to come after you directly." Sarah pulled back, looking up at him with fierce determination. "I am not leaving." This is my home, our home, and I will not be driven away by a bully. We face this together or not at all." Cole searched her face, then kissed her hard, a kiss filled with desperation and love and fear. When he finally released her, his eyes were bright in the moonlight. "I love you, Sarah Mitchell. I did not plan on it, did not think I had the right, but I love you more than I have ever loved anything." Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks, hot and welcome. "I love you too, Cole Harrison. I think I have loved you since you agreed to teach me to ride even though you thought I would fail. I love your patience and your strength and your good heart. I love the way you treat me like an equal and challenge me to be better." "Then we face this together," Cole agreed. "But you have to promise me you will be careful, that you will not take unnecessary risks. I cannot lose you." "You will not lose me, I promise." They reported the attack to the sheriff the next morning, and Brennan brought in a deputy from a neighboring town to help patrol. The community began to rally around Sarah and Cole as word spread about the harassment they were facing. Ben Cooper organized a group of neighboring ranchers to take turns riding past the property at night, a show of solidarity that moved Sarah deeply. Robert Garrett denied any involvement, claiming he knew nothing about attacks or sabotage, but his denials rang hollow. The sheriff began investigating Garrett's hired hands, several of whom had questionable backgrounds and ties to rustling operations in New Mexico. Through it all, Sarah and Cole's relationship deepened and strengthened. They worked as a true team now, anticipating each other's needs, communicating with looks and small gestures. Cole taught Sarah to shoot accurately, and she practiced daily until she could hit a target at 50 yards. Sarah taught Cole to read better, spending evenings helping him work through the newspaper and Thomas's small library of books. "I never had much schooling," Cole admitted one night as they sat together on the porch, watching the sunset. "Left school at 14 to work the ranch after my mother died. I can read enough to get by, but you make it look so easy." "You make a lot of things look easy that are actually quite difficult," Sarah countered. "I could not do half of what you do every day without years of practice." "We balance each other," Cole said, pulling her closer. "You are the brains and I am the brawn. You are far more than brawn, and you know it." Sarah kissed his jaw, enjoying the rasp of his evening stubble. "You have excellent instincts and business sense. You just never had the opportunity to develop them formally. Well, I have that opportunity now, thanks to you." They sat in comfortable silence, Sarah's head on Cole's shoulder, his arm around her waist. The night was cool and clear, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Sarah thought about her life in Boston, the fancy dinners and social events that had felt so important then, and could not imagine ever wanting to go back. "Cole, do you ever think about the future, about what you want from life?" "I used to think about having my own ranch, being independent, maybe finding a good woman to settle down with eventually. But my plans were always vague, someday plans." He tilted her face up to look at him. "Now I think about specific things. About waking up next to you every morning, building this ranch into something even better than Thomas had, maybe having children someday. About growing old with you and teaching our grandchildren to ride." Sarah's heart swelled with love so intense it almost hurt. "I want all of that too. Every bit of it." "Then we should probably make it official," Cole said, reaching into his pocket. "I know I should have done this properly, should have asked your father's permission and gotten you a fancy ring, but we are not exactly conventional people, are we?" He pulled out a simple gold band, worn smooth with age. "This was my mother's wedding ring. My father gave it to me before he died, told me to give it to a woman worthy of her memory. Sarah Mitchell, you are the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes." Sarah did not hesitate, her answer immediate and certain. "Yes, Cole, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, warm and solid against her skin. Then he kissed her with a sweetness that made her cry, gentle and reverent and full of promise. When they finally separated, both were smiling through tears. "When?" Sarah asked. "When should we get married?" "Whenever you want. Tomorrow if you can arrange it." Sarah laughed. Let us give it a few weeks, do it properly. I want Mrs. Patterson there and Ben Cooper and the other neighbors who have been so kind. I want to marry you in front of the whole town and show everyone that we belong together. I like the sound of that. Cole stood, pulling her to her feet. Come on, future Mrs. Harrison, we should celebrate. They went inside, and Cole produced a bottle of whiskey Thomas had kept for special occasions. They toasted their future, drinking from tin cups because Sarah still had not acquired proper glassware, then talked excitedly about wedding plans and what their life together would look like. I want to expand the herd over the next few years, Cole said. With careful breeding and good management, we could double our cattle within 5 years, maybe buy some of the adjacent land when it comes available. I want to plant a proper garden and maybe some fruit trees near the house, Sarah said. And I have been thinking about bringing in some chickens for eggs, maybe even some pigs. A real working ranch, Cole agreed. We can do this, Sarah. Together we can build something lasting. They made plans late into the night, and when exhaustion finally claimed them, Cole once again prepared his pallet in the main room. But this time, Sarah protested more firmly. We are engaged now. I think the rules can bend a little. Sarah Mitchell, are you trying to compromise my virtue? Cole teased. Maybe I am. She pulled him toward her bedroom door. You can still sleep on the floor if you insist, but at least be in the same room with me. I want to fall asleep looking at you and wake up the same way. Cole relented, bringing his blankets into her room and making up a bed on the floor beside her narrow cot. They lay in the darkness, holding hands across the space between them, talking in whispers until sleep came. It was innocent and sweet, and somehow more intimate than anything Sarah had experienced before. The next morning, they rode into town together to share their news and begin making wedding arrangements. Mrs. Patterson was delighted, hugging them both and immediately offering to host a reception at the boarding house. The minister, Reverend Carson, agreed to perform the ceremony in 3 weeks, giving them time to prepare properly. Word spread quickly through Copper Springs and reactions were mixed. Most people were happy for them, seeing their engagement as a romantic story of the Eastern lady and the cowboy finding love. But Mrs. Caldwell and her circle pursed their lips in disapproval, whispering about hasty marriages and questionable propriety. Robert Garrett, when he heard the news in the saloon, threw his whiskey glass against the wall and stalked out, his fury evident. He sees his last chance to get the water rights disappearing, Ben Cooper told Cole later. A married couple with legal claim to the property is much harder to displace than a single woman alone. He is not going to give up, Cole. Watch your back. The warning proved prophetic. 2 nights later, someone set fire to the hay barn. Cole smelled smoke and woke Sarah, and they fought the blaze for hours with help from neighbors who saw the flames and rode over. They managed to save the barn structure, but lost most of the winter hay supply, a serious blow. This is arson, clear as day, Sheriff Brennan said, examining the scene in the morning light. Someone poured coal oil around the base and lit it. Miss Mitchell, I think it is time we had a serious talk with Robert Garrett. But when the sheriff rode out to the Double G Ranch with Cole beside him, Garrett had an alibi. He had been in Tucson on business. Witnesses could confirm it, though of course he could have paid someone to do the deed in his absence. Without proof, there was nothing the sheriff could do except warn Garrett that he was being watched. This is getting dangerous, Cole said on the ride back. Sarah needs protection beyond what I can provide alone. I can deputize you if it would help, Brennan offered. Give you legal authority to make arrests if you catch anyone in the act. Do it. Cole accepted the badge the sheriff pinned to his shirt. Whatever it takes to keep her safe. Sarah was frightened by the escalation but refused to be cowed. She and Cole hired 2 additional ranch hands, young men from town who were honest and hardworking, to help with daily operations and provide extra security. They rebuilt the hay supply by purchasing from neighboring ranches at inflated prices that ate into their savings. and they moved forward with wedding plans, determined not to let Garrett's harassment disrupt their happiness. The wedding was set for a Saturday in early October, after the fall roundup, but before winter weather made travel difficult. Sarah ordered a simple white dress from Mrs. Chen, nothing elaborate but pretty and well-made. Cole purchased a new suit from the general store, his first since he was 17, and got a proper haircut from the barber. The night before the wedding, Sarah stayed at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house as tradition demanded, while Cole remained at the ranch with the two hired hands. Sarah lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, too excited and nervous to sleep, thinking about the enormous step she was taking. Marrying Cole meant committing to this life permanently, tying her fate to the ranch and the territory, and a future that was uncertain in many ways. But it also meant waking up beside the man she loved every morning, building a life together based on mutual respect and partnership, creating a home where they could be themselves without apology. The choice was easy when she looked at it that way. Morning arrived bright and clear, perfect weather for a wedding. Mrs. Patterson helped Sarah dress, pinning up her hair and adding the small pearl earrings that had been Sarah's grandmother's. When Sarah looked in the mirror, she saw a different woman than the one who had arrived in Copper Springs 3 months ago. That woman had been pale and uncertain, running from a life she did not want. This woman was sun-browned and confident, running toward something she chose. The church was full when Sarah arrived, the entire town apparently curious about the Eastern lady marrying her cowboy foreman. Ben Cooper walked her down the aisle since her own father was 2,000 miles away and had not bothered to respond to the wedding invitation she had sent. Sarah did not care, her eyes fixed on Cole standing at the front of the church looking nervous and handsome in his new suit. When she reached him and took his hand, Cole's expression transformed from anxious to joyful, his gray eyes bright with love. Reverend Carson performed the ceremony with warmth and humor, talking about partnership and commitment and the adventure of building a life together on the frontier. When he pronounced them husband and wife, Cole kissed Sarah with a tenderness that made several women in the congregation sigh audibly. The reception at Mrs. Patterson's boarding house was lively and warm, with food and music and genuine celebration. Neighbors brought gifts, practical things like blankets and cooking pots and tools. Ben Cooper gave them a breeding pair of pigs, laughing at Sarah's delighted expression. Even Miss Lucy from the saloon attended, bringing an expensive bottle of French champagne she had been saving for a special occasion. Robert Garrett did not attend, but his absence was noted and commented upon, another sign of his displeasure. Sarah refused to let thoughts of him ruin her wedding day, focusing instead on dancing with her husband, accepting congratulations, and reveling in the joy of the moment. As sunset approached, Cole and Sarah finally escaped the party, riding back to the ranch together in the wagon, tin cans trailing behind them tied to the back by helpful friends. The two hired hands had moved into the bunkhouse for the night, giving the newlyweds privacy in the main house. Cole carried Sarah over the threshold, both of them laughing, and set her down gently in the main room. "Welcome home, Mrs. Harrison." "I was already home," Sarah said softly, "but this makes it official." They stood together in the lamplight, suddenly shy despite months of growing intimacy. Cole touched her face gently, his rough fingers tracing the line of her jaw. "I love you, Sarah. I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you. You already are." Sarah rose on her toes to kiss him. "You have been from the beginning, I just had to make you see it." Their wedding night was tender and sweet, a natural progression of the love they had been building. Cole was patient and gentle, making sure Sarah felt safe and cherished, and Sarah gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bed that was now theirs, talking and laughing and planning until exhaustion finally claimed them. The next morning, Sarah woke to find Cole already awake, watching her with an expression of wonder. "Good morning, wife." "Good morning, husband." Sarah stretched, feeling pleasantly sore and deeply happy. "What time is it?" Dawn about. "The stock will need tending soon, but I wanted to watch you sleep for a bit. You look peaceful. I feel happy." Sarah curled into him, resting her head on his chest. "Thank you for marrying me," Cole laughed, the sound rumbling under her ear. "I think I should be thanking you. A few months ago, I was a broke ranch hand with no prospects. Now I am married to the most amazing woman in the territory and helping to run a successful ranch." "My life has changed completely." "Our life," Sarah corrected. "Everything we have together." "Equal partners, remember, equal partners," Cole agreed, sealing it with a kiss. They rose and dressed, beginning their first full day as a married couple. The work was the same as always, feeding animals and checking water and mending fence, but everything felt different, charged with new meaning. They were building their future with every task, creating the foundation for the life they wanted. Over the following weeks, they settled into married life, learning each other's rhythms and habits. Sarah discovered that Cole snored lightly when he slept on his back, and that he liked his coffee strong enough to float a horseshoe. Cole learned that Sarah was not a morning person until she had eaten something, and that she hummed while she worked in the garden. These small intimacies wove them together more tightly than any ceremony could. The fall roundup arrived, a week of intense work gathering cattle from across the rangeland and preparing them for the drive to market. Sarah worked alongside Cole and the hired hands, dusty and exhausted but exhilarated. She could rope competently now, ride all day without complaint, and handle cattle with confidence. Cole watched her work with obvious pride, and the hired hands treated her with genuine respect. They drove the herd to Tucson in early November, a journey that took 4 days through beautiful desert country. Sarah had never been so tired or so satisfied, pushing cattle during the day and sleeping under the stars at night with Cole's arms around her. In Tucson, they sold the cattle for a good price, enough to cover expenses for the year and provide a comfortable cushion for expansion. "We did it," Sarah said as they deposited the money at the bank. "We actually did it. You sound surprised," Cole smiled. "I never doubted we would succeed." "I doubted. When the barn burned, when Garrett's men attacked, when everything seemed to be falling apart, I doubted, but you never did." "Because I believe in us," Cole said simply. "In you, you are stronger than you know, Sarah." On the journey back to Copper Springs, they stopped at a homestead Cole had been watching, a property adjacent to their ranch that had recently been abandoned when the family gave up and moved to California. The land was rough but had potential, and the water rights would double their access to the creek that fed both properties. "We could buy it," Cole suggested. "Use some of the profit from the cattle sale. It would give us room to expand the herd and maybe start a horse breeding operation." Thomas always talked about breeding working horses, selling to the army and other ranchers. Sarah walked the property, envisioning what it could become with work and vision. "Let us do it. Let us buy the land and build something bigger than we ever planned." They returned to Copper Springs and made an offer through the bank, which was accepted quickly. By December, they owned twice as much land as they had started with, and Cole was already making plans for spring expansion. Life was good, busy and challenging but deeply fulfilling. Christmas arrived, and Sarah decorated the house with pine branches and ribbon, making the first holiday in her new home special. She and Cole exchanged simple gifts, a new saddle blanket she had woven for him, a carved wooden box for her jewelry that he had made during quiet evenings. They invited Mrs. Patterson and Ben Cooper for Christmas dinner, roasting a chicken and making biscuits and sharing stories and laughter. As the year turned from 1882 to 1883, Sarah reflected on how much her life had transformed. 12 months ago, she had been trapped in Boston, engaged to a man she did not love, suffocating under expectations she could not meet. Now she was married to her best friend and soulmate, running a successful ranch in the Arizona territory, living a life she had chosen. Winter passed quietly, with cold nights spent by the fire and days devoted to maintenance and planning. Cole taught Sarah to play chess using a set Thomas had owned, and they spent hours locked in strategic battle, Sarah gradually improving until she won as often as she lost. They read together, shared dreams, made love, and talked about the future they were building. In March, Sarah realized she had missed her monthly courses twice and felt different, more tired than usual and sensitive to smells. She waited another week to be sure, then told Cole one evening after dinner, "I think I am pregnant." Cole stared at her, his expression cycling through shock, joy, and wonder. "Are you sure?" "Reasonably sure, yes. I should see a doctor to confirm, but I know my own body." He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby. Sarah, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Sarah asked, though she could hear the joy in his voice. "Happy does not even begin to cover it. I am overwhelmed. I am terrified. I am more excited than I have ever been." Cole pulled back to look at her face. "How are you feeling? Are you all right? Do you need to rest more? Should you stop working outside?" Sarah laughed at his rapid-fire questions. "I am fine, Cole. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time, and they manage to work right up until the birth in most cases. I will be careful, but I am not going to stop living my life." They rode into town the next day to see Dr. Henley, who confirmed the pregnancy and estimated the baby would arrive in October. "You are healthy and strong, Mrs. Harrison. I see no reason this should not be a normal pregnancy. Just avoid heavy lifting in the later months and make sure you are eating well." The news spread through Copper Springs quickly, and suddenly Sarah found herself the recipient of advice from every woman in town, wanted or not. Mrs. Patterson brought baby clothes she had saved from years ago. Mrs. Chen offered to sew a layette. Even Mrs. Caldwell thawed slightly, telling Sarah that motherhood was the proper calling for a woman and expressing hope that marriage and impending children would settle Sarah's wild ways. Cole became almost comically protective, trying to prevent Sarah from doing anything strenuous, which led to their first serious argument as a married couple. "I am pregnant, not an invalid," Sarah said, exasperated when Cole tried to take a bucket of feed from her hands. "I can carry grain to the chickens without harming the baby." "I just want to keep you safe," Cole protested. "Both of you. I know and I love you for it, but you have to let me live my life." "I will be careful, I promise, but I am not going to spend the next 6 months sitting in a chair doing needlework." They compromised, with Sarah agreeing to avoid the most strenuous tasks and Cole agreeing to stop hovering quite so much. As spring progressed into summer, Sarah's belly grew and the reality of the baby became more apparent. Cole took to talking to her stomach in the evenings, telling their child stories about the ranch and promising to teach them to ride as soon as they were big enough. "What if it is a girl?" Sarah asked, amused. "Will you still teach her to ride and rope?" "Of course. Our daughter will know how to work the land just like her mother, and if it is a boy, he will learn to treat women with respect and value their strength. Either way, this child will know they are loved and capable of anything they set their mind to." Sarah fell in love with Cole all over again, hearing him talk about their future child with such certainty and enthusiasm. She had chosen well, she knew. Found a partner who would be a true father, not just a distant authority figure like her own father had been. In June, Robert Garrett made one final attempt to force them to sell. He filed a legal challenge claiming that Thomas's water rights were invalid due to a technicality in the original filing. The case went before the territorial judge in Tucson, and Sarah and Cole had to travel to the city to defend their claim. The courtroom was hot and crowded, and Sarah, 5 months pregnant and uncomfortable, sat beside Cole as lawyers argued over documents and precedents. Garrett watched them with cold satisfaction, clearly believing he had found a way to take what he wanted through legal maneuvering. But the judge, after reviewing all the evidence, ruled in their favor. "The water rights are clear and properly filed. This claim is without merit and appears to be nothing more than harassment. Mr. Garrett, you are ordered to cease all attempts to acquire or contest the water rights of the Harrison Ranch. If I see you in my court on this matter again, I will hold you in contempt. Case dismissed. Garrett's face turned purple with rage, but there was nothing he could do. He stormed from the courtroom, and Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. It is over. He cannot take the ranch. He can try other things, Cole warned. But legally, we are protected now. The judge's ruling sets precedent. They celebrated with dinner at a nice restaurant in Tucson, then stayed overnight at a hotel before making the journey home. That night, lying in the unfamiliar hotel bed, Sarah felt the baby move for the first time, a flutter like butterfly wings against the inside of her stomach. "Cole," she whispered, grabbing his hand and pressing it to her belly. "Feel that? The baby is moving." Cole's eyes went wide with wonder as he felt the gentle movements under his palm. "That is our child. That is really happening." "It is really happening," Sarah agreed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Summer passed in a haze of heat and preparation. Sarah sewed baby clothes and blankets, washed and prepared the second bedroom as a nursery. Cole built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth and carving their initials into the headboard along with the baby's expected birth date. The ranch prospered, the new land providing excellent grazing, and they hired a third hand to help with the expanded operation. In September, Sarah's energy flagged, her belly enormous and movement difficult. Cole took over most of her chores without complaint, insisting she rest and prepare for the birth. Mrs. Patterson came out to the ranch to stay for a few weeks, helping with cooking and cleaning and providing experienced company. "My first is always late," Mrs. Patterson said cheerfully. "Do not be surprised if this baby takes its time arriving." But on the 1st of October, Sarah woke before dawn with contractions, and by mid-morning the baby was ready to make its appearance. Cole rode for the doctor in a panic while Mrs. Patterson calmly prepared the bedroom and talked Sarah through the labor. Dr. Henley arrived in time to oversee the delivery, and by sunset Sarah held her son in her arms, a squalling red-faced infant with a shock of dark hair. Cole came into the room, his face pale and anxious, and stopped dead at the sight of Sarah holding the baby. "Is he all right? Are you all right?" "We are perfect," Sarah said, exhausted but radiant. "Come meet your son." Cole approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny face with an expression of absolute wonder. "He is so small. He will grow." Sarah placed the baby in Cole's arms, showing him how to support the head. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months without deciding. Now Cole looked at his son and said, "Thomas, after your uncle, the man who brought us together, Thomas Cole Harrison." "Thomas," Sarah repeated, loving the sound of it. "Yes, that is perfect." The next weeks passed in a blur of sleepless nights and constant feedings, learning to care for a newborn while still running the ranch. Cole proved to be a natural father, walking the floor with Thomas when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, utterly besotted with his tiny son. Sarah recovered slowly, her body healing while she navigated the challenges of motherhood. Mrs. Patterson stayed for 2 weeks before returning to town, but neighbors continued to visit, bringing food and gifts and offers of help. The community embraced the young family, pleased to see the ranch thriving and a new generation taking root in the territory. As Thomas grew from a newborn to an infant, Sarah marveled at how much her life had changed in just over a year. She had fled Boston seeking freedom and found so much more than that: a home, a partner, a purpose, and now a family. The work was still hard, the challenges still real, but she faced them with Cole beside her and their son sleeping peacefully in the cradle Cole had built. Winter came again, bringing cold nights and occasional snow to the high desert. Sarah and Cole took turns walking with Thomas when he fussed, showing him the stars through the window and telling him stories about the ranch he would someday help run. On Christmas Eve, they stood together on the porch with their son bundled in blankets between them, looking out at the land they had fought so hard to keep. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked quietly. Giving up your life in Boston, taking all these risks? Never, Sarah said firmly. Not for a single moment. This life with you is everything I ever wanted without knowing I wanted it. Cole kissed her temple, his arm tight around her waist. I love you, Sarah Harrison. You took a broken-down ranch hand with nothing to offer and made him feel like the richest man alive. You had everything to offer, Sarah corrected. Your knowledge, your integrity, your heart. Those are the things that matter, the things that built this life we share. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, the vast desert stretching endlessly around them. Thomas made a small sound, and they both looked down at him, his serious gray eyes so like his father's, studying their faces with infant intensity. We should go inside, Sarah said reluctantly. It is getting cold. But before they moved, Cole turned to face her fully, his expression serious and full of love. Sarah, I have been thinking about what you said months ago about partnership, about sharing the ranch fully. I want to make it official, legal. I want us to file the papers so the ranch is in both our names, equal owners. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Cole, you do not have to do that. I know I do not have to, I want to. You are the one who turned this place from just a job into a home, a future. You fought as hard as I did to keep it, maybe harder. It should belong to both of us, our children's inheritance equally. Then yes, Sarah said, her voice choked with emotion. Let us make it official, partners in everything. Partners in everything, Cole agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss. They filed the paperwork the next time they went to town, the ranch officially becoming the Harrison Ranch, owned jointly by Cole and Sarah Harrison. It was a small legal detail that meant everything, a symbol of the partnership they had built based on mutual respect and love. The years that followed brought new challenges and joys in equal measure. When Thomas was 2, Sarah gave birth to a daughter they named Rose, a tiny, serious girl with her mother's dark blonde hair and her father's determination. 2 years after Rose came another son, William, cheerful and easygoing, completing their family. The ranch prospered under their joint management, the herd growing, the horse breeding program succeeding beyond their initial hopes. They purchased more adjacent land when it became available, hired reliable hands who stayed for years, and became pillars of the Copper Springs community. Cole served several terms as a deputy sheriff, and Sarah organized a school in town when she realized the children of the area had no access to education. Robert Garrett never completely gave up his animosity, but time and the law had defanged his threats. He grew old and bitter on his ranch to the east, watching the Harrisons succeed where he had failed. When he died in 1895, his property was divided among distant relatives who had no interest in maintaining it, and Cole bought the water rights at auction, finally uniting all the major water sources in the valley under Harrison ownership. Through it all, Sarah and Cole maintained the partnership they had forged in those early difficult months, making decisions together, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating victories as a team. They grew older, their faces lined by sun and wind, their hands weathered by work, but the love between them only deepened with time. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Cole took Sarah on a picnic to the creek where he had first taught her about water rights all those years ago. The spot was shaded by cottonwood trees they had planted, a peaceful refuge from the busy ranch. Do you remember the first time I brought you here? Cole asked as they sat on a blanket, their children playing nearby. I remember feeling overwhelmed and out of my depth, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake coming west. Sarah smiled at the memory. I remember you being patient with me even though you thought I would fail. I never thought you would fail, Cole protested. I thought you might give up, which is different, but even then I saw the steel in you, the determination. I was terrified most of the time that first year. So was I, Cole admitted. Terrified I would let you down, that I would not be able to protect you from Garrett and his threats, that I was not good enough for you. Sarah turned to face him fully, taking his weathered hands in hers. Cole Harrison, you have never let me down, not once. You have been my partner, my love, my best friend. You gave me a life I could not have imagined, and I am grateful for every single day we have shared. I should be thanking you, Cole said softly. That day you stepped off the stagecoach in your fancy Boston dress, I thought you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. But I never imagined you would become so much more than beautiful. You became the center of my world, the reason I wake up every morning excited about the day ahead. I love you, Sarah said simply. After 20 years, 3 children, and more adventures than I can count, I love you more than I did the day we married. I love you too. Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. I have something for you. I know we said no gifts this year with William needing new boots and the barn needing repairs, but I wanted you to have this. Sarah opened the pouch and gasped. Inside was a gold ring set with a small diamond, simple but beautiful. Cole, we cannot afford this. I have been saving for 2 years, Cole said, taking the ring and slipping it onto her finger beside the plain gold band that had been his mother's. You have never complained about having just a simple wedding band, but I wanted you to have something special, something that shows the world how much you mean to me. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she looked at the ring sparkling on her finger. It is beautiful. You are beautiful. How did I get so lucky? I think we both got lucky. Cole pulled her close, kissing her with the same tenderness he had shown on their wedding day 20 years ago. Finding each other was the best thing that ever happened to either of us. Their children ran over, curious about what their parents were doing, and Sarah showed them the ring. Thomas, now 19 and running much of the daily ranch operation, grinned. About time, Pa. I have been telling you for a year that Ma deserved a proper engagement ring. You knew about this. Sarah looked at her son with mock outrage. We all knew, Rose said, laughing. Pa made us promise not to tell. He wanted it to be a surprise. Even William, only 13 but already showing signs of becoming as tall as his father, chimed in. Pa said Ma was worth more than diamonds, but he wanted to give her one anyway. Sarah looked around at her family, her husband and children gathered by the creek on this beautiful autumn day, and felt her heart overflow with love and gratitude. This life, this family, this partnership with Cole was everything she had never known she wanted. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, they packed up the picnic and walked back to the ranch house together. The land stretched around them, familiar and beloved, every acre representing work and dreams and determination. Sarah took Cole's hand as they walked, the new ring on her finger catching the fading light. Cole, she said softly, so only he could hear. Do you remember what you said to me once about not needing gold when you had me? I remember every word I have ever said to you, Cole replied. But yes, I remember that specifically. It was true then, and it is true now. All the gold in the world could not compare to what we have built together. I feel the same way. This life, this family, these are the treasures that matter, not gold or diamonds or fancy things from the city. Just us working together, loving each other, building something that will last. Cole stopped walking and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply while their children groaned good-naturedly and walked ahead. When he finally released her, his gray eyes were bright with emotion. The cowboy said, I do not need gold when I have got you, he murmured against her hair. Sarah smiled and took his weathered hand, the hand that had taught her to rope and ride, that had built their home and held their children, that had never failed to reach for hers in the darkness. And she smiled and took his weathered hand, she finished softly, and they lived happily ever after. We are still living it, Cole corrected, still writing our story. Then let us make it a good one, Sarah said, full of love and adventure and partnership. It already is, Cole said. It has been from the moment you stepped off that stagecoach and decided to stay. Everything good in my life started that day. They walked the rest of the way to the house hand in hand, their children's laughter floating back to them on the evening breeze. The ranch house glowed warm with lamplight, smoke curling from the chimney, a beacon of home in the vast desert landscape. Inside, they would have dinner together, talk about the day's work and plans for tomorrow, share the small and large moments that made up a life. Years later, when Thomas brought home a wife of his own and Rose announced her engagement to the son of a neighboring rancher, when William decided to study veterinary medicine in California and expand the family business in a new direction, Sarah and Cole would sit on the porch together and watch their grandchildren play in the yard. They would talk about the early days, the struggles and triumphs, the way they had built something lasting from nothing but determination and love. Cole would tell the story of the Eastern lady who came west with nothing but courage and a carpetbag, who learned to rope and ride and run a ranch, who stood up to bullies and refused to give up even when everything seemed to be falling apart. Sarah would tell the story of the cowboy who taught her everything she needed to know, who treated her as an equal partner, who loved her with a steadiness and devotion that never wavered. And their grandchildren would listen with wide eyes, understanding that they were part of something bigger than themselves, a legacy of partnership and love that started with two people who took a chance on each other in the wild west of Arizona Territory in 1882. On their 50th wedding anniversary, when Cole was 79 and Sarah was 73, the whole town of Copper Springs threw them a celebration. The ranch had passed primarily to Thomas by then, though Cole still rode out every morning to check on things, and Sarah still kept the accounts and made decisions about breeding stock. They were older, slower, but no less devoted to each other or the life they had built. At the party, the mayor gave a speech about the Harrison Ranch and how it had become one of the most successful operations in the territory, employing dozens of people and contributing to the community's prosperity. He talked about Sarah's work establishing schools and Cole's decades of service as a deputy. He called them pillars of the community and an example of what dedication and partnership could achieve. But when it was Cole's turn to speak, he kept it simple. He took Sarah's hand, still wearing both the simple gold band and the diamond ring he had given her 30 years earlier, and said, "People ask me the secret to a long marriage, to building something that lasts. The truth is simple. Find a partner who challenges you to be better, who works beside you as an equal, who loves you even when you are covered in dust and exhausted from a long day. Find someone you respect as much as you love and build your life together one day at a time." I was lucky enough to find that person 50 years ago, and every day since has been a gift. Sarah stood beside him, tears streaming down her weathered face, and added her own words. "Cole taught me what it means to be truly free, to choose my own path and live without apology. He showed me that love is not about pretty words or grand gestures, though those have their place. Real love is showing up every day, working together through the hard times, celebrating the good times, and never giving up on each other. I do not need gold when I have him. I never did." The crowd applauded, many people wiping away tears, and someone started playing a fiddle. Cole and Sarah danced together as they had on their wedding day 50 years ago, older and slower but still perfectly in sync, still a team, still deeply and completely in love. They had many more years together after that, good years filled with grandchildren and great-grandchildren, with work they loved and land they had nurtured. When Cole finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 86, Sarah held his hand and whispered that she would see him again soon. She followed him 6 months later, dying quietly in the house they had shared, surrounded by family and the echoes of a life well lived. The Harrison Ranch continued for generations after them, run by their descendants who carried forward the values of partnership and hard work and love of the land. The story of Cole and Sarah became family legend, told and retold, embellished and refined, but always centered on the same truth that they had lived every day of their marriage. He did not need gold when he had her. She did not need anything but his weathered hand in hers, and the life they built together. And they lived happily ever after, in the truest and most lasting sense of those words, partners in everything until the very end and beyond. Their love a legacy that would endure as long as the Arizona desert stretched beneath the endless sky.